afternoon. I hope everybody's dry.
That's a big ask.
It's a mess. So I'll call our work session into order. Tiffany will be here in just a little while. I'm glad everybody's here. First up for our work sessions are delegations. And I'll ask Marco if he would.
Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will tell you when you have 1 minute left. You may begin when you are ready. We have an hour and 1 minute.
Ms. Taylor, are you here? I am. You may come if you're ready. It looks like our clock's malfunctioning, Ms. Taylor, so
Okay, all right, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Sierra Taylor. I'm a parent of 2 children in the Hamilton County school system. They go to Alpine Crest Elementary School as of last year. One's going to middle school and one's going to a different school next year. Excuse me, I'm really nervous, so if I sound really shaky, that's why. So I just want to kind of explain what happened to our family, or how I feel what happened to our family, and then we'll go from there. So I was headed to dinner. My 9-year-old daughter, she was telling me, hey, I'm really excited. We wrote a paper in school. We wrote a newsletter. I'm very, very excited. I want you to read this. So as I'm driving to dinner, I have my daughter, my other daughter, 11-year-old, read the paper aloud as I'm driving. And as she's referring to John Brown, she's making these comments, and she says, he should not have helped the slaves because they were meant to be slaves and work for the superior of human beings. That was the first statement I heard, and I'm like, oh, what is this paper about? So I have an 11-year-old reading this paper, a 9-year-old excited about a paper, and I'm driving and appalled. So the next statement I hear is, besides, slaves are just like cattle. Okay. Continue. What is this paper about? But continue. Brown should have been more than hanged. He should have suffered. Also in this newsletter paper written by 4th grade students. So as I'm hearing these words come out, I'm really confused, appalled. I kind of stopped my 11-year-old, hey, like maybe let's not read anymore. Let's just stop until I can understand where this paper is coming from. What is this? So my 9-year-old, she explains, oh, we were just here, we were meant to write a newsletter. And we were supposed to write a newsletter in regards to the way slaves were treated during the time. And so it was a perspective paper. And so from the perspective of the South in that time period, they were supposed to write a newsletter of how they felt and, how they felt during that time. So I thought that the context was a little weird, and it was a little jarring for me, but then I brought it to the principal, and my mother as well came with me, and we, wanted to get to the bottom of, like, what was this assignment, what's going on? And so the first excuse, and I call it an excuse because that's how I felt, was that the teacher explained that she read the newsletter and thought it sounded a little off and asked that the students revise the newsletter. But somehow that original print out was printed. So she called it a misprint, an accident. Another thing that was continuously explained to me from the superintendent, the principal, the teacher is, oh, this is the 4th grade standard. We're supposed to teach about these topics. We have to teach about slavery, which I do not mind. I think we should speak about it, but in what way are we teaching these topics? Also, the history, it's just ugly. It's ugly history. But I didn't learn history in this way, and I don't know if any of you learned history in this way, but I don't think this was the proper way to teach it. So my questions are, how could you accidentally print these words? This is not the standard I want for my children, young Black girls growing up in Hamilton County. We are in Tennessee, and this is not the history as I understand it. So I've lived in various non-diverse communities. I've lived in Utah, I've lived in Kentucky, and they did not teach my children in this way. So why is it I have to come back to my hometown where I was born and raised, my children were born and raised, to have my children taught in this manner? So I basically just have 3 questions that I want to address with you guys to sum up. I want to wonder, what are my children learning in the Hamilton County school system? What are the kids taking away from the message? So if they're reading a newsletter written in this manner, what are the kids taking away from this? And then when there is a difficult study topic, what is the plan to make minority students feel safe and accepted by the majority in the school setting? And thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gooden, Michelle Gooden.
Good rainy afternoon. I just wanted to come today. My name is Michelle Gooden, and I'm on the PECA team. I serve as a board member for HCEA, and I just wanted to come and appreciate, just tell you how we appreciate the district's earnest collaboration on our MOU. I think that's coming shortly. Tonight, okay. And this was something that we worked collaboratively together, and I think it was a success. And so we want to thank you all for working hard for teachers to get a 5% raise. I'm very excited about this. The MOU that's coming up has protections for working conditions and provides educators with a fair grievance process should it be necessary. We encourage all educators to read the MOU thoroughly. It contains some provisions that cover several aspects of their work, and we want to continue this collaboration with the county and continue to make this the best district to work in. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gooden. And I believe that's all we have okay. Okay, Dr. Robertson.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith. We wanted today with the presentation to really treat this as a prep session in terms of what you can expect in the coming year regarding presentations. We're going to change it up a little bit, obviously, with the new strategic plan. That would call for a change anyway, but looking at the cadence and also how we present, we want to give you an update there so you'll know what to expect in the coming school year in terms of presentations around our strategic plan. So obviously, you remember our strategic plan is based on our just cause that all children thrive and experience a future without limits. We agreed on these common values around integrity, excellence, inclusiveness, care, collaboration, and stewardship. And if we do this work well,
Ours is the only one on.
Mine, is it? Yeah.
Ours is on.
Mine.
No one in the middle.
There's no signal. Is
Every time there's a lightning bolt, it flashed, so.
Ben, is this supposed to go somewhere? Where is it? Maybe it's-
It should be okay.
Sherry, do we have hard copies?
The small one.
It looks.
I think Shirley put in.
You got it. It just came up.
There we go. Okay.
Again.
This is all my
There
stuff.
you go.
I think.
Okay, mine came on.
There we go.
Okay, we got it.
Nobody breathe and don't talk.
No, it's fine. Are those, they're back on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we know that if we do this work well, that our students and our graduates will reflect this portrait of a graduate. What I continue to point out on this portrait of a graduate is obviously we want students that are academically thriving, but if you look at some of the other characteristics, you'll notice it's things that we know kids need to be successful moving forward, whether that's being solutions oriented or a great communicator. We know there are other things rather than just academic skills for kids to be successful. So our 5 commitments are listed here. What we will plan to do in our presentations is to focus the presentations around our commitments and the key performance indicators associated with each of those commitments. So I'm going to pick the first 2, every student learns, every student belongs, just to kind of show you what we can expect. So under every student learns, the strategies this year are looking at students being developed as readers, writers, and thinkers, that we want to not just look at growth in the classroom, but also growth against the standard. And there's going to be a focus, obviously, on early literacy. So in the presentations, what you will see is us looking at our key performance indicators. So I'll pick one of these as an example. If you look at the first one, the percentage of students exceeding meeting or exceeding the goals on TCAP. If you look at 2022 baseline, you'll see there at 34.2, and then all students, the goal would be at 37.9, and then as the state breaks up by subgroups, we'll break those up as well. And so we'll focus on strategies that are making sure that we're going to hit this key performance indicator. So when you have a presentation about every student learns, you'll expect to see these KPIs and expect to see the strategies that are helping us get there, and basically updating the board on the strategies that are aligned to these key performance indicators. I'm going to bring up every student belongs to kind of point out a different perspective. And again, you see these strategies around creating a sense of belonging, community, building relationships with schools and families, and then continuing to improve student well-being. But I'm going to pick one on here, and when you see the third KPI, percent of families responding favorably to questions focused on student belonging, we don't really have a great baseline there. And so some of our KPIs, if you remember, in Opportunity 2030 are new performance indicators. And there are going to be some that we don't have baselines for that we'll have to get baselines over the next year. But we still want to update you on that. Where this is really a change from what we've done in the past, oftentimes in the past we've just brought up different divisions. You might see a presentation from teaching and learning. You might see a presentation around operations. We want to be more focused on the strategic plan and the key performance indicators, so you're getting an update on the very specific strategies that are aligned to our commitments in Opportunity 2030 and are focused on hitting those key performance indicators as we move forward. We'll look at doing these every couple of months, and of course there are going to be times where we need to sprinkle something that may not be aligned to the strategic plan, whether that's our vendor for custodial services coming in to give a quick update. But what you'll see for our team is us focusing on Opportunity 2030 and those key performance indicators. Any questions from the board about what to expect in terms of presentations this coming academic year?
Did you see any areas that you would make any adjustments?
Well, I'm sure we will as we go forward. We've gotten a little bit of data back. We got achievement data. You guys saw that earlier this week. We still haven't gotten growth data. I'm always a little bit hesitant to do a lot around data until we have the entire picture. And so we'll wait to get growth data and even get our district designation back before we really do anything significant in terms of presenting that to you.
Any other questions for Dr. Robertson? Okay, thank you, Dr. Robertson. Committee chair updates. Any committee chairs have an update?
I've got one thing to say about the question that Ms. Black gave at my legislative review. So, I was reading part of, I guess I need to do this. I was reading part of it into the number 10 in policy 3, or not policy, sorry, the statute 338, talking about participating students. It's incorrect. So in number 9, it defines voucher schools as participating schools. So that money would not follow a homeschooling student. It would only go to a participating school. And as defined in, again, section 9 of that, participating school means a private school as identified by Tennessee Code. That means the requirements established by the Department of Education and the State Board of Education for a category 1, 2, or 3 private school, and that seeks to enroll eligible students. Then goes in to describe eligible students. So,
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Any other committee chairs, updates?
Joe, I'm not a committee chair, but the policy committee, and that Joe, that's his, isn't it? He's not here. Joe Wingate, yeah. We received a letter from a fellow who is a plumber that, well, actually, he had plumbing supplies. I thought it was a very interesting concept that he had, that I think we might want to look at as a policy, that instead of having like one vendor for like all plumbing supplies, because if you're at school at the north end of the county and they're all the way at the other end of the county and need a plumbing supply, that they would have to go all the way to that vendor to get what they needed. I think that's something that we might need to look at. I think he had some real good ideas in that email. I think everyone got that email? Did we all get that? I think that's something we might want to look at. And not just for plumbing supplies, but for
All supplies.
all supplies. It's something that we might want to entertain, because this is such a big county, you know, with it being divided in two with the river, that's something I think we might want to look at.
I just want to let you know, I had Lindsay Sapiro in purchasing reach out to that gentleman to talk to him about it, and she's following up with them. Again, remember what that did was basically unit pricing on things that they consistently, so there's other ways to get him involved in the
Well, I mean, not just him, but for, like I say, for anything.
Yeah, and the reason we do that is so that there are multiple vendors across the county.
Okay.
But I just wanted you to know that
Okay.
we did reach out to him.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we want to look at our agenda. Does everyone, Sherry, have the request to amend that I have in front of me? So if you would note those requests to amend. Say?
You will see those on the agenda as well as you go through.
Okay.
Because of the documents.
So it's already been corrected on our agenda then?
On the one that we have, yes, sir.
This is a lot to absorb. You know this, don't you? Sitting up here getting it right for the meeting.
Okay, well, if it got, it's pretty standard. That I would ask under the consent agenda, is there anything listed there that anyone wants to discuss?
Yeah, I have one, Joe. Let's see if I can find my button here. I have a couple, actually. The 6D1A, under bids and contracts, the Blue Cross Blue Shield contract.
Okay.
And I just, since it's in the formal meeting, you want me to go ahead and?
Let's,
Okay.
right.
Okay, are we still negotiating that contract?
If this is, I'm trying to find it, if it's the response to the RFP that Cigna and Blue Cross responded to, this is you guys approving their response. They were the only two vendors that responded, and so we're recommending approving both Cigna and Blue Cross as vendors. Same two that we currently have as well.
Okay, so that's all that is. Okay, I started saying we're not approving anything though for anything that they've done, just we're starting to negotiate with them, correct?
Well,
Or to
they've
approve of
already
negotiating with them, yeah.
They've already responded to the RFP, so we are approving a renewed contract with Cigna and Blue Cross.
Well, is it exactly the same or have there been some changes?
So currently, we use Blue Cross Blue Shield as well as Cigna. And so they're the only two companies that submitted a proposal. And
Right.
so we feel comfortable with their proposals that this is something we want to continue for our employees. So there's still some nuts and bolts that we're working out that we're with the committee, but we feel confident that our employees need the choice, and so.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I just wondered what changes were made in the contract
Yes,
before
ma'am.
we
So
approved it.
Yeah, so we wanted to get this to you, let you know that we will be pursuing or continuing with Blue Cross and Cigna. You know, open enrollment would be in October.
Yeah.
And so we'll be getting that information, but we're still trying to figure out exactly, work out the logistics on what's best for us, but that's still a process. So we're not ready to spell that out yet. It's going to be similar, but I will say there'll be some changes in the way we go about doing the business for Blue Cross and Cigna.
If there's going to be some changes, I'd really rather see the changes before I vote on it. If we're just voting to go ahead and negotiate with them, that's one thing, but if
Yeah.
the
So are
voting
you-
on the
are you
contract
talking
is
about,
another.
like, I think I'm following you now. You're talking about like a difference in copay or a difference
Right,
in.
right.
Yeah, so that,
That's
Yes.
what I'm talking about. Are there going to be some changes?
Yes, ma'am. We'll bring that to you. Like I said, none of this will be going to go effect until January 24. So we'll bring that to you before we open enrollment. We just did not have that information now, but we wanted to share that we're done with the RFP process, which will include Blue Cross and Cigna.
Okay,
so any
thank you.
change like that, we would have to bring.
Yeah, I started saying, that's why I say if there's going to be a change, I just don't want to vote on it and not know what we're voting on.
Ms. Thurman, before any contract with these entities becomes final, it will have to come back to
Right,
the board for
okay.
approval, and the board will have to ratify.
Well, I just wanted to be sure that wasn't this. I
I
wasn't sure.
read this as an FYI.
Okay.
And, you know, letting you know where the administration is in this, because obviously if there's any change whatsoever, the board has to vote.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you. And also, the cell phone policy, once again, it's 6G2AH policy 6.311, cell phone policy. Let me see if I can find it here. And all my-
It's in your amended
I know.
Yeah.
I'm trying desperately to find it here. Okay. On lines, I know that the typo had been corrected from our original one, on line 26. I've noticed that's been corrected. But line 30, I'm still do not like grades 9 through 12 may, any individual school may choose to allow cell phones in designated areas during lunch period. I still do not like that. I think that still leaves, like I said, I wanted a uniform policy for everyone so it was easy to follow. And I don't like one school being able to do something in the high school and others not. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's fair. I think we talk about inequity all the time. To me, this is an inequity. So I will not vote for it with that line in there. For grades 9 through 12, each individual school may choose to allow cell phones in designated areas during lunch period. I just don't like that, and I will not be voting for it with that line in there.
Mr. Thurman, I would think at the appropriate time, if we want to make a motion to amend that, we can do that.
I'll make that motion to amend.
Well, this would be the time. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else there under the consent agenda that we need to touch on before we?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions.
Okay.
On 6D3A, on the IDEA preschool incentive grant, there's two different showing. One of those involves a separation from the rest, kind of naming Daisy Elementary and Middle Valley Elementary separate from all the other preschool programs. And then there's also two unnamed FTE teachers and benefits covered. I'm just curious why that one's separate from the other. So there's two of them actually, but the one that I'm questioning, so there's IDEA preschool incentive grant, FY24, and there's two of them, but one of them lists many schools involved, but then there's another one, 11.321, that separates out Daisy Elementary and Middle Valley Elementary, and then two unnamed FTE teacher and benefits. I was just curious why that's separate from all the others. Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, you look at the ID, the one that you just pointed out, 11.321, that's the budget by account codes. And so it doesn't have, it just pulls out the teacher, shows the FTE, and then Social Security, state retirement, all that stuff. So it's for those two specific locations.
Right. So why does that one do it and not the other one? Both of them falling under the same preschool incentive grant.
Does this, are these, well, I can speak to it from a Head Start standpoint. These two schools, no, Middle Valley does have a Head Start class. Daisy does not. Daisy has a Head Start, but it's not at the elementary school. So I don't know if, yeah. It's a
But
support.
it might be linked
But,
to this.
Yeah, that might be, yeah.
Okay. I was just curious.
That may be,
why
I
they
can't
were
speak to that, but I do know Middle Valley, so that may be because the budgeting is gonna be different there because Head Start is paying for some and state voluntary or Title I pre-K will be paying for the other. I can't, I mean, I'm only saying just what I may know from a layman's term. I can't really speak to that.
Mr. King, we'll try to get an answer.
Okay. It's just trying to get more knowledge into what we're doing here. And then 6E1, the year-end bully report, would we be able to get for our district, pull out separate what our district schools turned in for that year-end report?
We can get that.
Okay. And then I have two other clarifying things here. On 6G1, it's called the Full Service Community Schools Grant. It's $2.5 million. Now, if I understand that correctly, if we do receive that grant, then we also have to match that grant with $2.5 million? No, I'm not correct on that? Okay. So that would be 2.5 above what if we receive it, added on to what our budget is right now. All right. I didn't know if we had to match that or not. Is there any part of it that we have to match if we get that?
15% is what we would have to match.
All right.
With that, and some of our, we have GP.
Okay, 15%. All right. And so if we do that, what is that grant? Community schools grant, I know that's a broad term, but what's that looking at doing for us?
Yeah, so right now, the city of Chattanooga provides, the 7 coordinators for 7 of our schools, and then the Northside Neighborhood House provides some coordinators. This would look to extend the community schools work in the East Ridge. Right now, we're looking at the East Ridge pattern, Harrison, and potentially one other school.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 8. I think it's 8 still. It's 8 even with the 7 field.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying 8 in the grant. Yes, you're right. Sorry. Yes, City of Chattanooga. I don't want to take one away. We've got 8 from the City of Chattanooga. Thank you.
Mr. King.
So to answer your question, Middle Valley and Daisy have programs that are identified as what's developmental learning pre-K programs, because by law, if a child comes to us at an early age, 3 or 4, and they need special education services, we have an IDEA budget that funds the developmental learning program. We then have voluntary programs, which are state-funded general purpose budgets. So like Eastlake, the ones that are listed on all the others, but
Right.
Middle Valley and Daisy are very unique programs
Okay.
for
That's what
special
I
ed.
was-
Yeah.
And that's why I was just trying to get educated about that, because I knew there was a reason for it. I just didn't know what the reason was.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you. Have one more question, but before we get to that, 7A1, the differentiated pay thing, Mr. Brown, thank you very much for I don't have any questions or concerns about it. I have a thank you because I like the way it's lined out, and I would say this year if people have trouble with it, then they didn't look at it, So that's good that it's spelled out like it is. My last one, and we have this, so I know you're going to talk to us about the thriving kindergarten. My question is, under the highly qualified material, for another meeting, doesn't have to be this meeting, can you bring us one or two examples of what some of this stuff is going to look like for kindergartners?
Are you talking specifically like what the curriculum is that they're going to utilize, or are we talking about some of the shifts that we're making around some of the learning?
No, what some of the sample tools,
Sure.
like even assignments or whatever, just curious, what that will
Sure.
include.
Yep.
After reading through this. And that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, anyone got anything else under the?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I have a few questions. From the executive committee report, Dr. Robinson, could you give me a little bit more information about this Fostering Diverse Schools grant? We got this last Thursday, so that's like 15 days before the deadline. Did we apply late, or?
No, we haven't applied late, and it's just really asking for permission to apply. This isn't us getting the grant. We haven't gotten the grant. The grant is really, it is around student success planning and that work. So if we get it, we would be part of a group that is looking at that, and it doesn't commit us to anything other than being part of this initial phase that looks at producing some research around that. So that's why you're getting this, because we're applying for the grant, not because we've gotten it.
So this is like a test program?
Right.
Okay, well, that was one of my questions. Everybody else's. And under the Blue Cross Gateway building, that is 7B1, are we still negotiating for that, or is that a done deal?
No, sir. So the attorneys got together, and Scott will help me with this, but at some point, there was an agreement that buildings with schools would have, on the deed, would be joint between Hamilton County Commission and Hamilton County Board of Education. And so even though the county is purchasing this building, the board's name will be on the deed. And so the attorneys wanted board approval of the contract.
Okay, good. And then I have only one more issue, and I want to discuss the grading guidance document from October 2020 in terms of 6 strategies that were offered to principals in the district. One of them being a baseline of 59 grade that was to be in place for the 2020-2021 school year, for all the havoc that was going on from missing 10 weeks of school and then getting students back in school the first quarter, back and forth.
Is that, where is that on the agenda?
It is not on the agenda. It's something that I want to add.
Add to the agenda?
To the agenda or to the work session?
To the work session.
Talk to the chairman.
So we're not on, that item is not on the agenda, Mr. Bennett. So, excuse my ignorance here.
Sure. So, the board has the privilege to amend the agenda at the business meeting. So if somebody wants to make a motion to add that to the business meeting agenda as a discussion item, and if a majority of the board wants to talk about it, then it goes on the agenda.
Okay, where would that fall?
That would be.
Other board matters?
Under board matters. It would be the pleasure of the chair to put it wherever, but I would suggest board matters would be appropriate.
Does it have to be voted on, or can be requested by 2 people? What's the
So-
proper?
So, the the way something gets on the agenda is either before the board meeting, two people ask the chair to put it on, or at the meeting, one person can move. It's seconded, so they're your two people. Then if a majority vote to amend the agenda to add that item, it goes on.
So would that take place, since that would be a voting item, would that take place at the beginning of the board meeting? Or?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so it
sir.
wouldn't take place now?
Well, if you wanted to discuss it now in anticipation of the business meeting, that's the decision of the chair. That would be proper if that was your desire. Or alternatively, since it's not yet on the agenda, you could defer that. So it's your discretion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I don't have any problem with discussing, but I would like to defer that until Ms. Robertson
That's fine.
gets here to make that decision. Okay. Okay, anything else under the consent agenda that anybody wants to bring up or talk about? We've got some reports that are in our packet there. We've got a lot of policies that were in our second and final read. Any policies anybody wants to pull and talk about? I know we've already heard from the cell phone policy. Any other policies there that anybody'd like to discuss or talk about?
Well,
I would like to ask something.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you saw my light. All insurance is so terribly expensive. How do we go about putting our bid out? Like, it's unfortunate that only 2 companies responded. I mean, there's so many out there. How do we go about putting our bid, asking for a bid on our health insurance?
Oh, yes, ma'am. So that goes through our procurement office, so we follow the state law. I mean, I know Lindsay Superheroes, and, you know, that's her department, so we follow her guidance, and so it's posted just like any other large contract, and they have a time frame to submit. And again, you know, when you think about, we have a large organization, right? You know, 6,200 employees, so there's so it sounds the reason that Cigna and Blue Cross are the big players, and so they're going to be the ones that feel like they can.
So at this point, we don't know the deductible.
What we do know
optional.
is, yes, ma'am, the premiums are not going to change, right?
Oh.
I think it's some of the nuances we'll discuss and we'll bring to you, but, you know, the premiums from our standpoint is not going to change that we're paying this year. It's just we wanted to make sure the board understood that Blue Cross and Cigna were the ones that submitted the RFP, and our committee feels that we need to continue that with those 2 carriers. One, because it won't disrupt what we were doing here this year, and so, but we can bring you details before open enrollment begins.
Okay, well, I just know some agencies represent so many companies, but you just put it out there, and then
Yes,
people are
ma'am.
supposed to look for it.
Yes, ma'am. They know that process. They have to submit, and then there is a strict guidance on what we have to do in a sense to vote, to look at the details, also allow the representatives to discuss the committee what they bring to the table and how they can serve our employees. And so at the end, once we went through that complete process, Blue Cross and Cigna was voted by the committee to be awarded the RFP.
Well, hopefully the law of large numbers will prevail.
Okay, so we're confident they're going to continue the great service they've been
Okay, thank you.
for our employees.
And one more thing regarding the Blue Cross the Gateway. By putting our name on it, should we get a better opportunity at another location? Are we committed to having a school facility there?
I mean, I think for sure, we're not committing to anything there tonight, but I don't see a scenario where we would not want to vote to have some type of school there. When I've talked to many of you about this, it's a reminder, this is just approving purchasing the building. If we wanted to put anything in that building, whether it be a CTE hub or another school, the board would have to approve that.
Yeah, at this point, there's no money exchanged. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Chris.
I had a question for Zach. I missed the Blue Cross Blue Shield discussion because I was traffic and weather trying to get here. But I did have a question. I'm sorry, not Blue Cross, but the insurance discussion. So just so I'm clear, those are the 2 providers that will continue to carry us to cover employees, or employees can select benefits from as in previous years, correct?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so one thing I do have is like, I don't know how this goes or who has this discussion, but there needs to be a discussion about change in policy coverage mid-year, because that can cause an economic hardship for staff, and that has happened this year with the Blue Cross plan. I know they changed, like they were paying for something up until December, and then in January it changed, and so then where someone wasn't paying a certain amount, they're now having to incur another amount, and was told that Blue Cross has the liberty to do that. And I mean, I understand they're a company, but I think that needs to be negotiated, because if that's going to be the case, then our employees need to be notified of that, because that could cause an economic hardship, or not necessarily a drastic hardship, but I mean, if you've been budgeting for a specific service, or you selected a specific provider for a specific type of care, and then your insurance no longer covers what you were getting, but pieces of that coverage, so forth and so on. And that did happen. I can go into more detail offline, but just making sure.
I will say that, once our contracts are set, it's pretty clear what we're gonna cover, not cover. So I'm concerned that if something's changed midstream, that we really need to dig into that. And, Deborah Smith was our former benefits manager. So if you offline, let me know, because I'd love to be able to figure out what happened, because before we start, in January 1st, 24, the employees should know exactly what to expect and not to expect. So if there's something else that's off, we need to figure out.
And it wasn't a provider thing, because I did ask that question, and was told from the employee that the provider was thrown off with it too, because they had been receiving payment. And then
I'll reach out to you so we can get that information, so we can, while we're talking to the providers, figure out what's going on. We don't want that. We want to be very transparent on what our employees can expect to pay and the service they receive.
Thank you, that's all I had.
But could it also be that, they're going January through December, where we're going July through June? So in other words, they're under one coverage
year
up until the end of December, and then they're under another coverage possibly.
That's exactly right. So again, I don't want to speculate, just because all these cases are different, so I don't want to say something that's going to be false.
And even if that is the case, I still think there should be some type of notification so that people are aware. I mean, we get fiscal years versus calendar years and all that kind of stuff.
What I would say to the board, the good thing about, the RFP, we do feel that we've got some competitive rates, and that's a good thing for us, where we think we're going to get great service for our employees, and, we ask for best rates. I think we're going to be in better shape than we've been in the past, and we all know that healthcare is expensive, right? So that's a good thing for us. But I'll reach out, because I want to make sure that.
I'm in support of them. I'm not saying that. I just want just that little piece, if we could just clarify that.
Yes, ma'am.
It was.
They are a business.
It was co-pays that changed.
Yeah, so copay's not going to change midstream, so that's why, we'll set that. Now, you're exactly right. So right now, a copay could be one amount, and if we decide that we're going to change copays, it will go into effect in January, right? And so that could be a change for a current employee, because even our previous employees from last year, we're still under the former contract. So there could be a change in January 1st.
That's where I saw. I'm just bringing up where I thought there was a thing, but then I was told, we're the July through June 30th, and they're the January through December 31st.
Yeah, but during open enrollment, to be clear, our employees will know exactly the
I just
plans.
think it needs to be clear, so
Yes,
that they
ma'am.
know, like, you can elect this care coverage now based on this provider or whatever, but it's subject to change January 1 or whatever. Like,
Yeah, but during open enrollment, we'll let them know the copay
Yeah.
for January 1st, 24. That'll be clear for either carrier, Cigna or, a PPO or HMO is different. All right?
Larry, you have a question, Larry? I think you're still lit up there. Sorry. Okay, anything else on any of our policies or anything under the consent agenda that?
Now, will the MOU be a part of the consent agenda?
It's under, business matters, sorry.
So that'll come later if we have some questions about it. Okay. That was what I had.
So I have a just brief question, if possible.
Sure.
So I noticed a lot of policies pulled
Yeah.
that were ready, so can you, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. There were footnotes in there about legal references, and so the General Assembly changed some statutes, and there's some slight wording changes or statutory references. So not all of these, but most of these, they're footnote changes that need to be uploaded correctly. And in the track changes of the last month, some of them just got lost. So it's not that we're like fundamentally rewriting the ADA policy. It's that there's a statutory change in there that we need to fix.
Okay. So that takes us, if there's anything else under the consent area. Okay, under administrative business matters, any questions there? Dr. Brown, if you would, speak to the Director of Transportation, that updated job classification.
Yes, sir. So periodically from our compliance office, we review all of our job descriptions and expectations. And so we was looking at the one that we presented to you for the Director of Transportation. Is just going through the job description, aligning the actual duties. So in this case, our director, his responsibilities totally aligned. Now you can read the job description, what we asked this individual to do. This is still a grade M. It's cost. There's no increase in a cost right now. We just want to be very transparent what we ask our Director of Transportation to do on a day-to-day basis. So this just
our person that's in that place now, that's our Jack.
No, sir.
Okay.
I hope not.
Is that, is he here? He's here. I see Brandon out there. Is somebody gonna be hired in his place? He's getting a different title.
This
This is just updating the
Just
wording
updating
so
the
that
wording,
his job
okay.
description matches what he's actually doing.
Okay.
No salary increase, no budget increase, anything else.
Okay.
Surprised that Mr. Allen's here. He was a part of a unprovoked accident today, so glad he's here.
Yeah, we was calling, we've been, in the previous board meetings, we've been giving him the title director, but we need to make sure it was aligned on paper as well. We've been saying supervisor, but he's definitely, his responsibility is at director level, so.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Joe, can I ask
Okay.
one more
Yes, go
question?
ahead.
Yeah, this diverse schools demonstration grant, is this going to replace other things that we have? What exactly are we going to do with this? I see some things here from their website. And how much of a grant is it that we're going to get, and how's it going to be divided up? And I'm just not real sure exactly. We just have so many of the, I see these come through. We see them come through all year. We see them at the first of the year, at the middle of the year, at the end of the year. For professional development, fostering diverse schools demonstration grant.
It's not, sorry.
I know this is just for you to apply for it, but if we get it, what are we
If
gonna
we
do?
get it, so it'll work with our student success planning. So we've expanded
Yeah,
student
I
success
know, but what does that
planning.
mean? Everything we do.
So
should
student
be
success
student
planning, like you
success.
think about, I use, for example, like North River Schools, and specifically talking about partnerships with Northside Neighborhood House. So it's trying to create connections for kids to remove barriers that they might have. So it may be that a student needs dental assistance, right?
Oh, okay, so it's that kind of program. I
Right.
guess I just wasn't real sure exactly because of some of the things on the website. It just sounded like it was almost, I didn't know if it was something that was going to go into the classroom, but this sounds like more like a before and after school plan is what you're saying, or to
Right.
help with those kind of issues rather
Yes.
than something else in the classroom?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, anything else under Chief Operations? Dr. Sharp, the Blue Cross Gateway building, we touched on that. Any other questions about that? Okay, what about Soddy Daisy? The partial property transfer there, any questions there?
Mr. Smith, if you don't mind, I can just provide some
Okay.
clarification to that. Some of the board members may not be aware, there's a, old Soddy Daisy High School is a piece of property that, currently there's a gymnasium that they use for wrestling and then a field that's used for, soccer and some other things. We're looking at donating, it's about 2.3 acres of the side piece of the property for the city of Soddy Daisy to put a community center. We've been talking to them for
Years.
2 or 3 years about this, and finally we've gotten to a place. We'll have some shared parking space, but it's really mutually beneficial for the city of Soddy Daisy and for us. This piece of property that we're donating, I do not see any future use of what we would need it for. So, Ms. Sermon, I don't know if you
Yes,
would add anything
yes,
to
that, yes, they're gonna build the Soddy Daisy Community Center there. It's currently now is a very small building up by the ball fields. And, also, like, they use that gymnasium also for the Soddy Daisy Kids Club. They use that for a lot of things, a lot of community activities up there. But I think it's a perfect piece of property. At one time, they were gonna put the Soddy Daisy Historical Society there, but the Soddy Daisy, the Historical Society bought an old bank building there, and they're gonna use that, so they're not gonna be using it for that. But I think it's a great use for that property. It's been sitting there for years and years. How much property is still there? Do you know? I'd have to look it up. Yeah. But when there's the Soddy Daisy soccer fields are there, I mean, that property's still used, so it's used a lot for the community as well.
Okay, thank you. So Midtown Learning Community, the Orchard Knob School turnaround plan, any questions about that?
Well, I would like a definition of it. I mean, what are we doing at Orchard Knob?
Yeah, so the state of Tennessee identified 5 schools that they wanted to put in a turnaround pilot, and that was done in the fall of 2021 to be implemented in this last cycle. And so the law requires that we partner with a consultant, outside consultant. Ed Direction is who we selected at that time, and they work in close partnership with Orchard Knob Middle to provide certain enhancements in the turnaround effort. So you can see in the plan, there's kind of 4 broad categories: instructional leadership, there's a culture piece, there's a behavior piece, there's an instructional piece, and it's just the monitoring of it. What the law requires us to do with the school board is to present to you the turnaround committee, and the turnaround committee must consist of parents and teachers and other district personnel. So what you're seeing tonight is the list for this next school year, 23-24, their turnaround committee that helps support the plan and do continuous improvement work around it.
Are teachers given more help?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
for additional
great.
professional learning and lots of opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thriving Kindergarten Toolkit, any questions there? Okay. Seeing none, I think that that takes us on down to information only. And is there anything else? And we'll adjourn this work session.
Vice Chairman Smith, there's
Yes.
2 additions there. The MOU between the Hamilton County Schools and the professional educators. Hamilton County Education Association was selected to collaborative conference with us. I apologize that it's coming too late. We finalized this with HCA Tuesday night. Scott has had a chance to look at it. You remember there's been a gap between this MOU and the last MOU, so a lot of things that are in the MOU are actually also covered by board policy. There's nothing that is substantial in terms of change from what we have done. We had a really good experience with HCA. You heard from one of the board or one of the members of collaborative conferencing in the delegation. So apologize this is coming late, but we would like to get it approved before we start the school year so teachers can go in knowing the MOU's been approved.
Well, what has changed in, I mean, what are we voting on? I don't really, I mean, I know it's basically the same, but when she was up here speaking, she said something about there were a couple of changes, I think.
Yeah, there are different categories that can collaborative conference. So I'll give you one example is like working conditions. And so in working conditions, it talks about things like how long is the school day. So one of the and this is more of a slight adjustment, I think, but one of the things that we kind of had to go back and forth about a little bit is the number of meetings that we can have after school, right? And so you talk with the professional educators, say what's a reasonable amount per month that we can hold meetings after school, right? And so part of the MOU will say, part of the working condition is you can only have 4 hours per month of after-school meetings. And so it's things like that, that are part of it. But again, Scott, I don't know if you you can say it better how board policy covers a lot of this already because of the gap.
Yeah, so there are not any substantial changes between the MOU that's before you tonight and for those of you who've been on the board for a while, the MOU that we had a year ago, but that expired. There's some wording changes that address, among other things, what Dr. Robertson just referenced about the meeting after school, but largely this tracks with what we had, and largely it tracks with existing school board policy and state law.
So you want us to approve this tonight? That,
Yes, and you know, if, yes.
okay. So that'll
So
come.
can we ask questions right now, or do we need to
Absolutely.
wait?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Aaron Foles with TDA is here also, so Aaron, Zach Brown was on the committee also.
Do we have a copy of it with the changes?
Should
We
have
do?
it here.
Okay, okay, perfect.
I started to say, are they highlighted?
Okay.
So, okay, so can we go ahead and ask him, I guess?
Go ahead, Gary.
Okay, so I was just curious, the insurance committee was completely crossed out. We were just talking about, Ms. Robinson was talking about insurance. I was just curious why there's no committee now by the PEC or that to review what the different insurance companies have, you know, who's then, if there is no insurance committee, who is reviewing the benefits of this insurance company versus this insurance versus, you know?
There's actually another committee that's envisioned under PECA, under the MOU, dealing with, I'm sorry? The wellness committee. And so,
Okay. So it's passing on.
As I understand, and I had a short conversation with Ms. Murray about this, and so that the assumption here was you don't need to meet just to meet, and if you've got one group that's already talking about something that affects the other group, then why not just have one meeting?
Okay.
On page 20.
All right. So then my next one is I've read through this, the school leadership committee no longer exists. I imagine it's under another name that's found within here.
We do have that, page 23.
Okay, so.
School leadership team, and that's actually in procedures already, but we kind of codified it in this MOU.
Okay, so under working conditions, Article 6, you've moved it from Article 6 to where?
It's under Article 6 on page 23, section 2, school leadership team.
Okay, so I must have, I've got it.
You see that, Gary?
How do you have a red line version, Gary?
I
You
asked
don't have
for it. I asked for that.
Okay. All right, so Gary's able to ask questions that kind of the rest of us can't, like, just being
Well,
honest.
and again, like, to be clear, technically, this is starting from
Why
scratch.
do we have to ask for that?
The MOU expired.
The
Right,
red line.
so
Oh.
this is
Like,
not technically a red line.
Maybe it should
Alright.
be.
It looks very much like the one that we had.
Do you have a red line version?
No.
Whoever has it, can they
Can they just walk us through the red lines? I mean, that would,
You don't want us.
Oh, you don't want to know.
it's too much.
You don't want to know
I
all
thought
the
there wasn't
red
that many
lines.
changes. It looks like there's a lot of changes.
Hey, give me that back. I got it.
Hey, we are, unity, the board is one.
Yeah, that's true. Your copy is our
So,
copy.
we're cheating on this test.
My reading glasses can't see that far away.
Come on.
Vice Chairman Smith,
I'm just-
can
All
I
right.
ask Aaron Foles, just so you guys are getting
Sure.
a perspective of not just the.
Absolutely. Come on up, Aaron.
You're getting a perspective, Faust, sorry. Aaron Fowles, not Aaron Bowles.
So the change in the leadership committee, the thing that a lot of educators brought forward was that they wanted to have a voice on that committee that was not necessarily selected by the principals. And so we worked together and we confidently agree that the professional employee organizations can have association representatives in each building, and those association representatives can be on that leadership team. So the team is not wholly selected by the principal.
I guess where I'm coming from is from an educator standpoint and a previously an administrator standpoint, there were a few things cut out that kind of threw up a flag for me. So if I can ask, I've got two other things that I'd like to ask. So Article 6, Section 13, the legal action against a professional employee was completely cut out. I'm hoping that was put in.
Yeah, I can actually address that.
Okay.
The language that had been put in there is actually less generous than state law. So the language that was put in there said that an employee would be protected unless the employee was found negligent. And I think that was actually requested by the teachers. And this is a misconception that I think boards don't do a very good job of communicating to the teachers. Under Tennessee law, if a teacher's acting within the course and scope of his or her employment for the board, if something goes wrong, they are immune from suit. That's just straight up Tennessee law. Also, under our policy of insurance with the Tennessee Risk Management Trust, we have incredibly broad coverage for employees already. So the reason that was taken, I know what was happening, sorry. So the reason that was taken out is because it was actually disadvantageous for our employees.
So by not doing it, it's a little broader and.
That's right. So,
Okay.
and we can talk about this offline if you'd like, but the statute, Tennessee law gives local governments limited immunity from suit, except where the General Assembly has said it's okay to sue the government for these reasons. When it does so, when we are subject to suit for negligence for something that Aaron might do, Aaron is immune from suit. So, I mean, he as long as he's acting in good faith within the course and scope of his employment, he is protected by our governmental immunity, and we assume his liability. And that means we defend him, we protect him, and if there's a judgment, we cover it. So long as he's acting in good faith within the course and scope of his employment. There are some complicated exceptions. And so I said, let's not put that in there, because if the General Assembly changes the law, then we got to go back and fix this. And anyway.
Okay, all right. And then the last one that just kind of threw up a flag was the whole section on payroll deductions was removed.
There's an injunction down right now about a law that says that we can't do withholding. I don't honestly know what the General Assembly is what the court is going to do with that. And my suggestion was if the injunction is made permanent, then in good faith, we can go back and add that back in.
And we agreed in our meeting on Tuesday that if an injunction is granted, right now it's a temporary restraining order until July 29th, that the district agreed in good faith to allow payroll deduction. You know, we're not signing up any new members with payroll deduction. It will just be a matter of our existing membership, giving us more time to get them converted.
So payroll deduction for HCEA?
Yes. Yeah.
Or TEA or anybody?
Yeah. Well, for
That's what I'm
only
wondering.
for professional
It's not in the
association.
redactions. I don't know.
Yeah.
Since we don't have the redactions, I don't know what's been taken out.
You can still do payroll deduction for health insurance or any other things is not covered by that provision. This is only for dues remittance. And the state did what it did, and now there's a restraining order. And so if it comes back that we have that the injunction happens, we can come back and add it. But the district can do things outside of the scope of the MOU anyway.
So it doesn't affect things like United Way?
No, if you
Correct.
remember in the governor, when he pressed for the $50,000 minimum payment, they also slid in there that professional organizations could no longer deduct from payroll dues. And so it's not just HCA, it could be any other professional, but it
So-
doesn't impact health insurance.
So you would have to send out statements just like everyone else. if you wanted to get your dues, right? I mean, you'd have to.
We have a TEA has got a vehicle to collect dues directly that some people had already been doing. So yeah, that was kind of the issue at play, and that was mentioned in the court case, whether or not you could still do payroll deductions for other stuff. And that's not touched. And the district has agreed that if the injunction is granted and that section is cut out of the law, that payroll deduction for dues will continue. We just took it out of the MOU in the event
So we can
hopefully
still do
unlikely-
it against state law? Is that what he's saying?
No.
No, just the opposite.
Yeah.
So the General Assembly, like the Superintendent said, the General Assembly passed a budget that included a minimum pay for teachers. And as part of that, there was a proviso that says that we couldn't do payroll deductions for professional organizations.
Right.
TEA, PET, AFT, whomever else. The TEA got an injunction that prohibits, a restraining order that prohibits the state from enforcing that.
Right.
And so the commissioner has advised us, ignore it for now, ignore the state law for now, let's see what happens with the court case. The question for us is, did we want to put something in the MOU that the court might say we can't have? And so my advice was, let's let that dust settle, let's figure out what's gonna happen, and then if the court says that statute was ill-conceived, then in good faith, we can negotiate it back in.
Yeah.
So basically, that part is, we have a pause button for that.
So you can make amendments to a memorandum
Yeah.
of agreement.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in agreement that they ought to have to go out and get the dues like everybody else.
And
It's just not
HCEA
good
has
to me.
agreed to all of these changes. So the version that you have is the version that both the district and HCEA has agreed to.
We shouldn't have to do
Okay.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Yeah, I did just want to make a statement for the sake of knowing what to do whenever it's time to vote, in case folks are not feeling comfortable about not having the final version in front of them. We could decide to pull this from the agenda and we could have a special called session to vote on it if you would prefer to do that. I think the goal though from the administration is to get and HCEA is to get this in place by August 9th when school starts, but there is certainly the option of having a special called session if folks do not feel comfortable and ready to vote. I did just want to at least put that out there because I think it's important. So.
Okay. Anything else? I think we've pretty well.
You have one more item added. It's the early approval to purchase a chiller for Eastlake Academy.
That's correct.
Mr. Smith, AC at Eastlake Academy went down and the part component is like on a 52-week delay. And so this is purchasing an alternative option. Justin Wood understands it, but it's multiple chillers that can be connected to make the entire unit operate. And so for us to get air going at Eastlake before kids and teachers come back, we needed to get this done. So executive committee approved it. We're asking for you guys to ratify it. It can be used, we could use this there for several years, so it could be a temporary fix, but it also has possibility of using this as a emergency method if other ACs go out. So this isn't money that's just being spent on a Band-Aid that we don't have use for down the road. We can use it down the road.
So it can be moved from location to location?
That's what maintenance is thinking, but I'm not saying that is necessarily going to be the plan. My first question to them was, are we spending this much money on something we're using for 6 weeks? Their answer was no, we could actually use it there for a number of years, or we could use it in other locations that needed emergency assistance.
But they're out of air conditioning for a year if we don't do this.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Well, that's not gonna
No,
work.
that's not gonna happen.
Perfect month to ask for that.
Right, that's all. Joe, can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
We're finished with the agenda. I just need to ask a question. I meant to ask it last month and forgot.
Go ahead.
Whatever happened to the Stand for Children contract? It was gonna be brought back. When did we talk about that?
After individual conversations and that conversation that night, we decided it's just
Okay.
time to bring it back.
Okay, all right, that's one. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll stand adjourned from our work session, and we'll get back together and have our meeting here shortly.